Hey guys, welcome to my channel. Today we'll be taking a look at a game from the Tech Mahindra Global Chess League. Now this game is played between the PBG Alaskan Knights against the Alpine SG Pipers. So in this game, white is Zhongyi and black is Hou Yifan. So both of these players are from China, and they're like this one of the both of these two players are really strong players, like women players in China, and also they are ranked really high in the world in the women's section. So they are really strong women players, and actually because they're from China and I am also from China, so I do know like some information about both of these two players. So I'm gonna like quickly introduce like both of them. So first of all, Hou Yifan. Hou Yifan, I think she is, I mean, like, first of all, her chess skills are really good, but some of you guys might not know that her studies, like her her school studies are also really well. She even got to the best university in China. And also at the same time she is really good at chess. So actually also she is good at chess, good at like her school studies as well as language. So she is also good at English as well. So that is why like many of us admire her because she is just like good at like many things. And as for Tan Zhongyi, she basically just studies chess at a very young age, and she doesn't really do any studies. Like her studies are not as good as Hou Yifan. She doesn't really learn like her English skills are not as good as hers. But and also I can tell you guys that she is from a city in China called Chongqing. Now in this city, I'm not sure if you guys know it, but I'm gonna like introduce it to you guys anyway. So this city actually, especially there are many women players who like came from this city, and like in this like players in this city are actually really strong because most of the players play at a really young age, like they start learning at a really young age, and especially the women players in this city, they are really strong. So yeah, but in all, both of these two players are really like high leveled. But in my opinion, I still admire Hou Yifan more because besides playing chess, like some people they just play chess and don't do anything else. But she also like do her studies, like she also do some teachings, like teaching some school like subjects, and also like yeah, also her language skills are really good. So that's why I admire her more. And yeah, but Tanoi is also pretty strong at chess. All right, so done with the introduction of these two players. Now let's get into this game. Now Tan Zhongyi is white, and she started with d4, and now Hou Yifan replied with d5, c4, e6, knight f3, knight f6, e3, a6, and now b3, b6, bishop d3, bishop b7. So actually all of these first few moves are just opening moves, so really like no comments on these moves. Short castle, bishop d6 takes, and now e takes d5. So here worth noticing is that so there are three options to take here. You can either take with the pawn, or take with the knight, or take with the bishop. So besides taking with the pawn, which was played in the game, if you take with the knight, now the main problem is that white will have some e4 ideas in the future. Maybe not right now, because if you go e4 right now, there's knight b4 to kick this bishop, but probably white can first of all go, for example, like rook e1, and then prepare for e4, which is very annoying for black. And also, if black were to take the d pawn with the bishop, then after bishop d5, here white can now go queen e2, for example, or rook e1 as well to threaten e4 on the next move. And actually, this is pretty much like unstoppable. So black should not allow white to go e4 that easily, and that is why e takes d5 is the best option. Bishop a3 offering a trade of bishops because this d6 bishop is the most active piece in black's territory, and we're using our not so like a bit actually a little bit passive bishop to trade off this active bishop, so it's actually worth it. And in the game, black basically has to take because there's no other options. And after bishop takes, knight takes, queen d6, attacking the knight goes back to b1. So if the knight were instead like retreating back to c2, like if you don't want to go back again, then you want to go to c2. But actually knight on c2 doesn't really do anything because, I mean, like all the squares that it wants to reach are all being blocked, or like white has her other pieces on these squares. So the knight on c2 basically is just a useless piece, simply just like a pawn. So that's why instead you go knight b1, and after knight b1 short castle, knight bd2. So white's main idea in this position is to go e4, try to push e4, and black's idea is to go c5. So here, white's what white is trying to do is to create or open up in the center, and black is trying to create some counterplay on the queen side. So in the game, a5 was played, and now queen c2. So putting some pressure on this h7 pawn. And after bishop a6, offering a trade of bishops, because as you can see again, it's actually very similar to the trade here with bishop a3. And now black is going bishop a6, using this not so active bishop to trade off this really strong bishop. And yeah, it's just worth it. After bishop a6, white has like no other choice but to allow the trade to happen. And instead of like trading immediately, white first of all played rook fc1 and putting pressure on the c pawn. And you can see that now suddenly black is having some trouble here because black's c pawn is like it's not able to push or being traded off, and it is just a weakness in the game. So black took on d3, and after queen takes d3, knight d7, rook c2. So white is thinking like it's trying to double the rooks on the c file to attack the c pawn, rook e8, preventing white from going e4, rook ac1, and now c5. So white basically just white allowed black to push c5 because it is just somehow unstoppable. But what now white's actually it's not that easy for white to improve the position, but really what white needs to do is now to maneuver the pieces, because you can see that this move now, c5 now being played. Now can you find a new weakness in black's territory? So actually if you found it, it is the b5 square, because this square is no longer black will no longer be able to reach it with either of these pawns. With either the a pawn or the c pawn, none of them can reach this square, which means that if one of white's knight is able to get there, then it will be considered as an outpost. And that is white's new idea. So when you're playing in a position and you don't have a plan, or things are starting to go really strange or boring and you don't know what to do, now you have to see, for example, especially when your opponent is had just made a pawn move, you have to think, okay, so this move, does it because pawns, you cannot retreat them back, so once they're being pushed, it can never go back. So when you push a pawn, you have to be really careful, because for example, when your opponent pushes a pawn, and now you can think, okay, so this move, does it create any weaknesses in my opponent's territory, for example, weakens another piece or another pawn or another square? So in this case, it weakens the b5 square. So now you have an idea, okay, the b5 square is a weakness, and which of my pieces will get there to create its best effect? And now you just see it's not the queen, it's not the rook, so it is the knight. So the knight now will go to b5. So then you just have to find a route for the knight to go there, and now a plan is formed. So that is what happened in the game. First of all, Tandorin played h3, and after a4, rook d1, after a few moves, now she started to maneuver her pieces and try to get the knight to b5. And after knight b1, takes, well, actually now suddenly you can see that because okay, I'm going to play a few moves, because the queen is no longer on d6 and it has retreated back. Suddenly sometimes you have to be you have to know when to switch your plans, because for example, now does it the knight can still go to b5, of course, but it is still as effective as it is before. Okay, so I guess it's not that effective because it doesn't really attack anything, even though it threatens to go knight c7, but that is just a very easy threat to prevent. So what other pieces can reach the b5 square? The queen? So if the queen were to go to b5, well, actually, it doesn't really attack anything directly, but indirectly, it puts pressure on the b6 pawn as well as the c5 pawn, preventing black's d7 knight from moving. So that is a new plan now. Rook e8 was played in the game, d takes, knight takes, and now queen b5. So now attacking the b6 pawn as well as indirectly putting some pressure on the d5 pawn. So in the game, queen b7 was played, defending both pawns, and now knight d4. So you can see that the c5 pawn is already being exchanged, which means that there's no other pawns that is like controlling the d4 square, and it is now free for white's knight to go to. And actually, it is a really great outpost. Knight e4 was played in the game, trying to trade off a pair of knights, and actually this is just unavoidable. And in the game, white here played rook dc1, which was considered as a mistake. Actually, what's best, the best reply here is actually just to take on e4. So here black basically has two options. First of all, to take with a pawn, and second of all, to take with a knight. So first of all, let's see what happens after taking with a knight. Taking with the knight, the main problem with this move is that it weakens the d5 pawn. Before there were two defenders, but now there's only one defender. So here, white can go knight c6, attacking the d5 pawn, and let's say the knight goes back, defending it. But now after, for example, rook dc1, white now has full control of this c file and is threatening to go knight e7 on the next move, and black is actually under a lot of positional pressure. So black can also take with a d pawn, which is probably a better choice, but white can still go knight c6 and then rook dc1 ideas. So worth noting is that, well, actually it's not that worth noting, but you just don't be tricked here. If black were to take on c2, don't take on c2 immediately, because then black will take the knight and black will be even better here. But first of all, you just take this knight with check, and after takes, you take the rook back, and you're simply up a full knight. So back to the game. Instead of taking on e4 immediately, Tandoori instead played rook dc1. Her idea was actually also pretty reasonable, trying to double up on the c file, and if white were to take, I'll take, and I'll use my other rook to take as well. So, but this is just the wrong idea here, because, well, actually in the game, the best move was not found, but black should have instead played takes, and after takes, just trade off the pieces, and after rook takes, go rook a1 check, and after king h2, go rook a2. So now the rook is actually much more active than it was before on the 8th rank, and it is now attacking the f2 pawn, so questioning white whether you push this pawn or defend it with the other pieces. So actually it is not an easy decision to make, and white is certainly not that easy to win, because the less the pieces are on the board, the more the easier black or the worse side will be able to draw the game. So yeah. But instead in the game, instead of taking on c3, Hou Yifan instead played rook c5, attacking the queen first, and after queen b4, then taking on c3. I guess this is still okay, just rook c5, I guess it's a little bit unnecessary, but it doesn't matter. And after takes, queen takes. Now the main problem is that black cannot get the rook to a1 to give that check, because white now has an extra option to take with a queen. In the game, knight e4 was played, attacking the queen, and after queen c2, knight c5, b4, knight e4, and g3. So already, you guys can now take a look at the time. Here, white has still 4 minutes left on the clock, while Hou Yifan only has 3 minutes left. So even though both sides' times usage are close to even, probably Tandoori is playing slightly faster, but as you can see, this game, this position is still pretty complicated. So and actually this time, in this tournament, the time control is with no increment, so you gotta be much faster, or else you'll lose on time. So of course both players need to play faster. In the game, knight d6 was played, now b5. So now rook c8, knight c6, white now, the knight is on an even better outpost because basically black has no way to get rid of it out of that square. Queen d7, now queen d3, the d5 pawn is also a huge weakness. Queen e6, queen d4, fixing the weakness as well as attacking the b6 pawn. Rook e8. So first of all, you have to know that you cannot take on b5 here because there's knight e7 check. And if you go, for example, like well, actually you can't really go there, but let's say if you go here, and then there's just take, and after king e7 you can go queen b4 and you have a full half piece. Alright, so in the game, instead rook e8 was played, and now queen takes b6, white is just up a full pawn, but now there's knight e4. Even though white is up a pawn, black still has some compensation for the pawn because her knight as well as the queen are all like putting some pressure on white's king. The h3 pawn is now like under pressure, and the knight is also like putting some pressure on these pawns in front of white's king. In the game, queen d4 was played, giving up the h3 pawn, but actually Hou Yifan didn't took it because after takes, there's queen takes, well actually queen takes d5 is even not the best move. Is not even the best move. Rook c2 is even better, and after, for example, like rook a8, trying to activate the rook, but now actually there's just b6, like white just needs to ignore it because the queen perfectly controls this a1 square that the rook wants to reach but will never reach. Alright, so in the game, knight g5 was played down. Actually, this is a miss. What black should have played instead to equalize this position is actually either to go queen h3 or queen f5. But after knight g5, like this is just missing the opportunity to equalize the position. Now white has some opportunities. Queen d1 was played. Now actually queen d1 is not the best reply. Queen e3 is the best move to like maintain the advantage. And after knight takes h3, king g2, knight g5 back. Now you just go knight d4. And in this position after queen h3, king g1, the king is actually perfectly safe here because this knight controls the crucial f3 square. So black's knight is actually unable to reach that square, and white should just be able to win by pushing the pawn. But instead in the game, queen d1 was played, and knight takes h3, king g2, which is actually, like, this idea is very similar, but the queen on d3 is just better than the queen on d1. Knight g5, knight d4, queen h3, king g1, h5, knight f3. Now this is a mistake. Like after knight f3, first of all, let's see what white should have played here. White should have just played b6 just to push the pawn, and probably, it is still not winning yet, but black needs to find this only move to still hold the position, and that is to go rook b8. And after rook b8, now I go rook b1, even though the position or the eval bar still says it is not a winning position for white, but it's not that easy for black to hold because there's just way too much pressure on this pawn. Like the pawn is putting too much pressure on black's pieces. Alright, so instead in the game though, after knight f3, knight f3 was played, and actually here black missed another chance to equalize the position, and it is an only move, which was to take on f3. And after takes, and here go h4. But I guess with only 1 minute left on the clock, it's not that easy to see, and in the game instead, knight e4, a blunder was played in the game. Now can you see why this is a blunder? Well, actually, because there's just, it is just giving up a free pawn. Queen d5. And probably Hou Yifan thought that she was having some tactics and was able to hold a draw after knight takes g3, takes, king f1, but it turns out that the king was able to reach safety. After rook e3, well, actually, anything else would have been losing, but rook e3, rook e3 is already getting into mate. After rook e8, king h7. Now, actually here, very interestingly, you can all see that queen h5 is just mate, right? Mate in 1. And it's not that hard to see. Zhongyi definitely saw this mate in 1 idea, but after thinking for about 14 seconds, here, instead of mating black in 1, she played this very curious queen f5 move. Instead of mate in 1, she is now gonna mate black in 3 moves, which is also winning for her, but it's just actually very curious, like why is she doing this? So is she trying just to like make this game more like special, or like curious for other people to talk about, or maybe she is just trying to do something funny. I don't know. But instead of going queen h5, she played this move, and after thinking for about 14 seconds. So I wonder what she was thinking in these 14 seconds. So yeah, it's actually very like interesting for us to think about this question. I mean, this is still mate. Whatever black goes, for example, queen g6, there's knight g5, and after there's rook h8. Of course, Hanoi calculated all of this, and she is sure that this is mate. But yeah, it's just curious that why she didn't go for mate and won instead. All right. So, but besides this whole game was actually pretty accurate by both sides. Hou Yifan with like little time, like she is under time pressure, like at the already, for example, like in the 30s moves and the 40 moves, like yeah, about that. She is like in time, like under time pressure, and she did made some mistakes and immediately blundered away and equalized position. So yeah, but anyways, hope you guys enjoyed this game and learned something from this game, from these two very strong like Chinese women's player. So yeah, hope you guys learned something from this game, and hope you guys like this video. Please leave comments down below to tell me, and please subscribe. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.